Hello everyone. The title of today's episode is Dancing with Time. And what Mr. Within will be talking about in depth is the human experience of time. And of course I will be speaking from my viewpoint and my experience, but I would also try to explore it in greater context as well. Let us begin from right now. Right now, Mr. Within is walking in a park. And as he's walking in a park, he is seeing that there is an aspect of experiencing a sense of time where there is an individual idea that is seeing a world. In other words, an individual conception within a greater conception in which time is its transitory movement in this world. As things move, it experiences time based on its point of reference. Now, at the same time, just like how man has an individual way of acknowledging things and also receiving it from an individual source, he also have ways of collectively receiving an individual thing and collectively, in a sense, receiving to a collective way where it's actually no longer relevant to our plane of existence, in a sense. It's not a physical relationship. But in a sense, what I mean by that is that the individual receiving the collective is when the individual's experience of time, based on its engagement in the actions of this world, is transitioning. So what that means is me standing right now here, I'm experiencing a sense of time. Suddenly, if I just begin doing, let's say, 100 push-ups, and as I'm doing these push-ups, suddenly I will see that in that intensity, my sense of how much time is going is changing because I am forcing certain projections of reality occurring instantly, as if there's no time to think about time because you're doing so many push-ups, you see? So then, the individual sense of you is not receiving it because you're moving into an experience which is in a different state of consciousness, more a dynamic state of consciousness. So perception changes in a way. So, in other words, as an individual, you have a meaningful way of, in a sense, extracting meaning from your world by considering a sense of time. However, this sense of time is not something that is stationary. It is not fixed. What that means is that the mystics and the yogis of ancient times realized something about human experience which was not communicatable but understandable. What that means is when you looked at the human experience, conceptually as an individual identity, things are timed well, but the chaos is right underneath. You know, time is like man walking on ice, and suddenly when that ice breaks, suddenly when the experience goes to a certain intensity of energy, in a sense, let us say for now, you would begin to see the being would change, the ice would begin to crack, you would feel new rivers of understanding which have no relevance to your prior state of consideration. What that means is think of the difference not being that the eagle is changing immediately, but the eagle's vision is changing when it flies from the branch to the sky. Do you see? So similarly, the human awareness is shifting. The human body is here, but your awareness to your experience and to your moment of being is changing. And so it's like man is dancing with time in the way where he's wearing a watch, and suddenly there are moments throughout the day, maybe when he's waiting for the bus, or when he's meditating gently by a stream, or when he's just for a second snoozing or daydreaming, you know, or whether if someone feels he's communicating with some other being or whatever, you know. There are certain moments where it's empty, and as it is empty, there is a collective intelligence as observance. But it depends on, I guess, your individual allocation and how much you consciously receive from your sense of collective consciousness as an individual consciousness, you see. What that means is the page was the same and everybody was comfortable until the writer began writing one more thing on it. And then everybody had to acknowledge the novel moment because the whole text had changed, do you see? So we are seeing now that our experience of time, based on our awareness to what multidimensionality is and our existential awareness beyond frameworks of ideology, has moved to simply the presence of the moment without interpretation, but all knowing and knowledge is kept there still. there are certain states of being in which you begin to see, like there's one where it's like your normal day when you wake up. Then there's ones where if you begin being more attentive to your sense of identity and what you are as a being, you begin to see it will change, for as you observe certain assumed fixed truths about yourself, you see they are not there, and so there comes a void in which you at first are conditioned to fill up, but then begin to realize that this is where you as a human being and as a mindful being in regards to one doing more self-exploration is seeing that you make the choice of how much you want to allow a sense of change in your life. What that means is time does not have to be something that is segmented if you are acknowledging life in an instant. It's as if the dance changes from we being stuck in a realm where there is time to us being the awareness that is keeping time here. And so as the being shifts, it is recognizing different senses of awareness. And so Mr. Within really finds it important to really talk about multidimensionality, because regardless, we need that area to be explored. We can't just call it imagination anymore. You know, there's obviously more greater phenomena happening. Do you know? Synchronicities are just your senses of trust in life changing. What Mr. Within has found a synchronicity to be is to be a trust in your moment, where your moment is simply flowing. Do you know? As self-awareness is embraced, time is not objective, because you are becoming aware that you as a being have a transcendent quality to your vision. In other words, when you look outside objective, when you look at yourself, there's subjective consideration, there's thought, but there's also the awareness beyond that, which is the profundity of realization. In which man is not just surviving physically, but is climbing a mountain of conception in his mind to see where conception comes from, and is finding it to be empty. When we look for the thinker, there's nobody there. There is no body there. Do you see? It is not a formed form of entrance into a greater experience, right? You're not looking for a door, you're looking for that which does not require anything to move beyond. Do you see? Mr. Within would like to communicate that there are many views on how reality is working right now. But a reality, but a certain view that needs to be considered about reality, which Mr. Within feels should be communicated now, is that you're not an individual, that you are not in a world, that you are in nowhere else other than the origin of your awareness. Now, to observe your origin of awareness, that means new perceptions of your intelligence are being introduced to you. When many new perceptions are being introduced to you, when you as a being, regardless of where you are, begin exploring the nature of novelty in this world, you begin to see novelty is that moment where creation and creator are seen to be looking at one another in an instant again. In one moment where we say it's one moment, but actually it is timeless, it is spaceless. It is that moment where we can no longer see our watch, because the experience is no longer in an individual physical body, it is in the whole space in which the body is present in. What that means is the intelligence of your moment of being is beyond words, and so you are an infinite source of poetry for yourself. You know? What that means is the greatest inspirations are no longer ones where we are finding what is needed. If you're still going based on what is needed mentality, you will begin to see on some level It doesn't matter what you are comparing in regards to data. It's all about the state of awareness to the information. It has nothing to do with whether you go to India or you find a guru or you do something and you suddenly go into Wonderland. Do you know? It is not about that. It is about you being aware that there are states of consciousness, that when you become observant of the change within this world, there are aspects of your intelligence which are given within a stillness that is beyond the program. What that means is that the programmer is recognized to not be there when the stillness and silence of man no longer needs manifestation to give it a reality. So after being who confronts a sense of self in regards to so many people nowadays, I see there's this huge big talk on the ego. People are like, oh gosh, don't be so egotistical, man. Don't be egotistical. Oh, you're being egotistical. Like, do you see the ego, when you become aware of it, you have nothing to talk about. Self-realization doesn't mean you have so many things to say. Self-realization means that your real eyes were beyond words, even beyond this form. So what kind of exploration does the human experience need, the human being need, to really understand its being? And to be honest, it is an awareness to how you're directly experiencing life. And nature is a very great messenger in telling you how it is done. What that means is that we are multidimensional beings. Our history and everything that has happened so far is the greatest writer's table or designer's table they can give you in regards to how you can work into realizing yourself. Because you see, right now humanity has developed gentle realities where he's allowing himself in a more self-aware manner as the consciousness of everybody changes, because the consciousness of the whole plane is changing. You see, it's like freedom just had to be introduced. It doesn't need a fight. Because if you're fighting, you're still projecting the imagery of a battle. Freedom is just an introduction from novelty. What that means is this sense of freedom could be as similar as you standing very still when someone in front of you is bursting in anger, where from inches away from your face they are shouting in ways where you have never seen a human being shout, let's say. When you stand there completely still and silent, you observe that because you're not communicating, you're not feeding an illusory reality. So as you stand still and silent in front of a very angry person and don't say anything for, let's say, as long as their state of being cools down, you begin to see that they will see that they are in an empty room. When you don't feed a problem, the problem is not there. When you don't feed an imagery, the imagery is not there. You must pay attention to how your attention is very playfully suggesting the world you live in. And this attention has different intensities, which is concentration and focus. And so meditation is showing you what life is beyond the different intensities of how the senses are showing what reality is. But meditation now, especially for the Western mind, needs to be one where it's not just meditation. What that means is we have a greater responsibility here. And the greater responsibility means that all those people before us made some decisions that are not looking like what we really want. And if we were to think, let's say, 7,000 years in the future, you would kind of feel that what needs to be changed is every system. When you think beyond, you begin to see that you're comfortable with leaving your past behind. When you leave your past behind, you're leaving it beyond the conception and the suggestion of time it has. What that means is time is really about self-awareness. The experience of time has changed many times for me. And what that really means is that there have been moments where I have touched items, and as I have, the item has on a subtle, very subtle level, projected a sense of time. There has been moments where I've gone into a place where it's as if I've been aware of two different numbers, two different series of numbers at the same time. And what I mean by that is as if knowing what time is it on two different clocks, which are different clocks, let's say. You see? It's as if like our intuition and that whole uncharted territory, once man authentically and sincerely and with great existential compassion begins exploring it, fearlessly, he begins to see that there is an intensity in intention that has already been there. That person who attempted something when he was challenged and he took the challenge and went in to see what that experience suggested, suddenly realized he did not avoid life. He trusted what went in there and understood more about his human phenomena. Time should be experienced beyond imagery, and that really translates into a trust in any segmented sense of time. So you're no longer creating projections where you had past lives based on reference points, when all reference points are in emptiness. What that means is don't be so satisfied with how you are speaking about your life and how much you feel you're comfortable with how you communicate or what you think life is. Because the crucial point is self-inquiry, which means you looking at what you are and having the will to see beyond it. So it's as if like you knowing that you have a car in the garage and you haven't checked it for a while, and you go in the garage and you're like, okay, I have this car, now what can I do with it? Do you see? It's like once you accept how reality is real for you, you give yourself an allowance to dive deeper into what is manifestation and what is manifest. What that means is, after a certain point, it became very clear to me that my ignorance was hurting no one else but me. Because I was not allowing myself to be in a dynamic state where my trust in life allowed many aspects of imagery to be present around me. As if you trust life with your origin of love, rather than expecting life to take care of you for then take care of it, you begin to see a profound thing happens. Your presence becomes acknowledged by different moments. It's as if you no longer are interested in as if like what happens in the evening when you've planned, let's say, for something, or what happens in this party you're going to, or this event, or this camp thing. It becomes something where you are so fascinated about your moment of existence. It's simply where you are right now. You're hearing my voice, you're aware of this in your moment. As you're aware of this, you completely become aware of the body, but you see that this body has a sense of energy which in an excited way wants to see more about itself. And it's not a curiosity based on an idea, it's the existential holy curiosity, divine curiosity that brought the ape into even manifestation. It made man even exist as an organism. Do you see? When you dance with time, you are dancing with many of your experiences of time, based on how you're acknowledging it in your memory. And as the state of consciousness of the being changes, literally it's as if every association in one world is immediately transitioning to a different association in another world, and the only thing that is memorable, that is aware of the information, is the space. And so what many sages have innately known. So what I'm talking about right now is not something that is generally said, but now it can be stated based on the type of explorers we have in the world now. But anyways, there's an aspect in which the sage understands the limits to his knowledge. So you as a human being suddenly see, okay, I only know this much. And you acknowledge the end of it. You acknowledge the deep, profound I don't know in your life. As you do, you sit there observant of all manifestation, and you begin to see that when you sit still, the butterfly lands on your forehead. But the minute you run after a reality or a desire or some projection of something to attain, you are chasing this butterfly and you will always feel a step behind because the idea cannot be satisfied. Your idea needs to live in comparison, but collective consciousness is beyond it. It's beyond language and terminology, but it can inspire language. Do you see? What that means that the intelligence that inspired human communication, what is language right now that man is speaking, that inspiration was a communication beyond language. So don't be surprised that sometimes you as a human being find yourself communicating something normally as if it's Bob talking, and then suddenly Bob realizes that he has no thought of what he's saying, but perfectly everything he needs to say is being said, and his whole environment and room is clear in a way where as if his presence was untouched. And Bob will suddenly be like, whoa, you know? I can totally see Bob beyond Bob. And so that is why you're an intelligence of an existential observer. That is why the moment of being is the true art of living. Do you see? And that is why many have said, be here and now, you know? You know, but as you come here and now, you begin to see it's as if you as a human being are observing your communication to such a degree where you're being an advanced communicator and seeing that reality is not just the first reality of consideration, but it's the ability of this life presence to be present beyond the transitory form, you know? What that means is that when I was young, I would go play soccer outside in the back of my yard. You know, that would be a game. Then I would go play, you know, let's say, different form of games, you know, and suddenly it would keep going on, and you know, you'd be going into the different games of life, different phases, and suddenly you begin to see that this activity you're doing and the reasons you have for it seem to be hollow. This is when you see you've made a lot of money, but what's the point? And you see, aside from physical survival, you as a human being, as simply as a multidimensional being, regardless of your intentions, need a cultivation of natural being. So when you do a lot of stuff, sometimes you get a lot of projections of an identity which is not you, because you're an omniscient experiencer. These words are not being used lightly, but in a sense, in a way, are. To be honest, what the human being has is his presence to observe. And that is really the totality of life for the identity. So it's as if on some level, the physical body is here and it goes into its temporal reality, and it's like you don't want to change anything from this world. That's why you don't have desires, because you can leave it untouched. You can walk as if you were never here. When you cultivate this ability doesn't cultivate just like this. It begins from you realizing a sense of devotion in you as an individual consideration in this reality as a life form, becoming more aware of the life force that is forming things. So a man who is aware of the beauty of life cannot do a crime because he does not need to change what is naturally flowing. Many Zen masters have gracefully seen this, you know. And there's this very nice Zen tale, actually, in which they say this young guy is trying to cross the river, and he goes and he sees like there's this sage, profound sage, you know, old sage on the other side, you know, of the river, you know, just meditating, And this guy, he doesn't know how to cross and he doesn't see a bridge, and he's like, hey man, he says, well, he doesn't say hey man. He sees the old guy meditating, so he begins to shout out, saying, hey dear sage, hey dear wise man, how do I get to the other side of the river? And the wise man stands up, and the sage stands up and says, you are on the other side of the river, and in a sense looks at the guy and sits down and continues his process and the stream of consciousness he was in regards to his meditative action. So what that story implies is that sometimes the problem suggests you're not there, but the answer was knowing that you always were. And this knowing comes through a sincerity and honesty in regards to how you approach the quality of your experience in this life. What that means is many people are trying to increase their standards of living. It's very important now for people to also increase the standards of their perception, because we want very huge movements to happen. There are very big renaissances that are going to happen in which man will begin to find his co-creation beyond the human idea, with intelligences beyond the human idea. And this doesn't mean that it's some kind of shape or some extraterrestrial thing or some kind of other being thing. It simply means that the human being is reaching a point where its experience has gone to its peak, and there is an alchemical transformation where he evolves and transcends no longer as an individual, but as a consciousness that is aware and can be the whole world and can be the whole moment transcending. And so it's in a sense an absolute liftoff. Mr. Within finds that this plane of existence is truly the greatest place to fly. That means if you want to understand consciousness, you can think of it this way. You're not trying to figure out consciousness, what consciousness means, or what the spirit or soul or God means for Bob. You're not seeking here an answer for your idea or identity, because that is temporal. You are here seeking a truth which is found through your most directest sense of observing what experience is for you in this life. So let's say if suddenly someone came up to you and said, hey man, how's the experience of life? You'd suddenly be like, whoa, it's now. And you'd suddenly realize the ability and the experience is that you are on a platform where change is not your opposition. Change is not your enemy. Change is the ability for you to go through many worlds and to be aware of them simultaneously, as your nature is designed in that manner. We must have trust in life, and above all, trust in the origin of awareness. So what that means is, it's fine if you don't trust, that person, or even if you don't trust me, but trust your moment and your origin of awareness, your moment of existence and your origin of existence. Begin there. Your orientation must begin with an aspect of your knowing. Because if you begin with a belief that's not, or come to you from your experiences, it's as if you're evolving someone else's reality, which is not even that real to you. Because I noticed that the way sometimes, especially in this modern world, some setbacks, some things that are setting back, in a sense, I don't want to say expansion of consciousness, but I want to say the awareness to what is here in more profounder ways, let us say. There is no need to need anything. But at the same time, when reality is present, we are trying to understand it by seeing how we are present with it. So in other words, if you take, for example, the concept of time, which is for this episode, in other words, dancing with time, you begin to see, if you meditate on the concept of time, the observer's intelligence is beyond the identity which is experiencing the time in its objective layout. And not to make this sound too complex, but what this means is that if you are acknowledging that you have free will and you are a free being, you have a freedom to be within many creations as you are simultaneously the creator of it. What that means is, in a collectively conscious way, you are the creator of the individualized sense of you that is here, which is the creation sense. But all of these, when simultaneously acknowledged, is a direct and absolute experience beyond a sense of space and time, which man usually is segmenting in regards to giving it a shape. When a being speaks about a sense of existential exploration beyond shape, he is suggesting that mysticism has no end. We are finding a branch that is infinite because it is showing how everything now is in a sense self-reflective. Do you know? It's as if man does not acknowledge his whole moment and how he's present within this whole world collectively, it's as if he is looking at the puppets in which he is keeping with his hands in front of him, and he's not acknowledging that it's his intelligence keeping here. And if you do not find reality in such ideology, you must realize it's in the way you are seeking. So when the human idea seeks to see beyond itself, there is no humanity to be observed. Do you see? There's no humanity to be seen. There's no augmentation of any general modality, do you know? Your experience will not be limited by time. Your experience will be made aware by you in a way where time is a body in it. But you must, as a being with your state of awareness, take an existential responsibility in experiencing your perception in deeper ways. And trust me, when you do, some very fabulous, phenomenal things happen. Sometimes you get remembrances which give you vision, which is simultaneously here. So it's like a self-remembrance which becomes a new reference point for you. Sometimes you receive that as man seeks his unknown. Other things that happen when you go through deep self-contemplation is that you get realizations as your world. So it's as if you are thinking so much, so compassionately into seeing what the other person is or how the other person is living, that as you do, you are getting a similarity in experience. It's as if a multidimensional being has just held hands with another multidimensional being, and pretty much that was the world that was given, created for both of them. So what that means is when many, in other words, in quotations, many, when many infinite multidimensional beings hold hands, there comes the manifestation of a world. And so you will begin to see man is right now getting to a point where we need huge renaissances in art to occur. As these renaissances in the creativity of man and his confrontation of imagery expand, man will begin to see that it's as if his art is taking to a point where his state of consciousness is realizing that he has greater perception, and that is why he always had inspiration. The reason you had the inspiration to draw that very brilliant painting was that you were aware simultaneously of the greater vision of that reality. So what that means is there have been certain moments where it doesn't matter whether I am speaking or I'm drawing or I'm writing, whatever I'm doing, whether I'm just walking, I move into a certain state of experience where if I am speaking, I get an experience of what I'm speaking about. So it's as if the landscape is very clear because I'm aware of how my communication is present here. And similarly with art, it's as if when I am drawing, it is not about an idea getting the knowledge to draw. It's like my whole moment of being is so free and allowed to draw that simply what needs to be done is done. And so it's as if you are working with your moment of being and its existential intelligence naturally. It's being done. And it's not being done by something, because it was omniscience that could keep the individual here. The collective had to be here for the individual to have a search. And so, my friends, you will begin to see that there is a very beautiful transcendental view within the human experience, where when you find Mr. Within, you receive a knowing which, once you open your eyes again, you are seeing it within all men, all beings, all life forms. When I say man or men, I am communicating about the human species. Do you see? The whole human species will be experienced. Your experience will change because your world has transitioned in a way where the external no longer needs to be based on an external origin, and so internally you are the manifestation that you are perceiving. So it's as if when Meister Eckhart said in his quote, "The same eyes that he sees God are the same eyes that God sees him," we may not know, but perhaps he could have been having an experience of a simultaneous sense of being where the only reason why you know it's collectively kept, this existential intelligence, is because the individuality was never here. It's like that moment where you step in a room and you realize that the minute you step out of it, you were never in the room. Do you see? It doesn't matter about if you were in the past, but right now you exist presently, never having been in the room. And so your experience is not one where it's becoming hindered by the regulations and restrictions of how time has been conditioned to be perceived by many. Culture has some limitations, but the individual experiencer is never limited. It doesn't matter how much cultural influences affect you. When you become aware of yourself, you will align yourself in a way where you will, it's as if the valves of imagination will open up for you. You will begin to get such a depth in life where your intuition becomes your guide. So what that means is when my intuition became my guide, in a sense, I just consciously stopped thinking about what to do. I mean, I would, of course, in a sense, be aware of what's happening constantly, And this does not mean ignore the sciences and many theories that are here to better man's life, but it's as if, like, my certainty was no longer comparatively based. It's as if I no longer seeked a cause and effect relationship which satisfied my truth. It's as if I knew that it was of a greater experience. So to receive a greater experience in this life requires you to observe yourself to a degree where you see that there are some aspects to you that you thought that were true, but they are not. So they were never part of you, in a sense. Do you see? Mankind is sometimes keeping judgments and ways of thinking which are not his. Do you know? What that means is you might have been a kid with a lollipop and suddenly some angry guy was saying something, to this other person, and you were just there and you just recorded that in your mind. You just heard that, and years later you just behaved that way, let's say. Do you know? The mind of man is at times thought to be elusive because man cannot understand how the body is keeping everything here, when experience can move beyond the considerations of what the body is. So in a sense, you dissolve ideology into your directest experience, which is naturally your moment of presence, and knowing does not need to be shaped to be known. It is here, and you are present in a way where you're dancing with time, for you were never bounded by it. You are experiencing it as a transcendental experiencer beyond the sense of space and time. And if you really look at man's experience and actuality of his experience, you are actually experiencing many senses of space and time, but man is not sensitive to it because he cannot understand it. Simultaneous realities is a teaching which needs to come to you with sincerity and with a certain existential sensitivity and awareness. You need to be aware of life more than ideas that are suggesting what life is, because ideas are as temporal as where they come from. When one explores the nature of consciousness, you even find yourselves at times being found within a moment where many of your memories are interweaving. It's as if your sense of experience in one memory is going into another sense, and so it's like the actions are, how would I say it? It's as if, like, let's say if my 5th birthday and my, let's say, 15th birthday, you know, it's as if I'm simultaneously aware of both of them in both dimensions where they are relevant based on the action of what I was doing, let's say, for example, eating cake, in both realities, and at the same time being aware of how I am conceiving them both here. Your process of thought is very complex when you look at it with simply, when you look at it with simple eyes, very observantly and directly. Do you know? What that means is you don't need the qualification when you know you can do it, and when the opportunity comes, you do it. Do you see? You don't need inspiration when you're aware of what you are. You are your own gift of transcendence. You are the next step of your evolution. And you are the one who is the observer of all that is here. Because that is how you are seeing what is here. Your moment of awareness, simply how you're right now, again, listening to this talk, is suggesting your sense of being. Do you see? And as you experience the silence, the stillness, you no longer can judge anybody. And you don't need to. You don't even need too many words that are not even yours. Mr.Within would like to do some mantras now, and some mantras also for the pilots of consciousness. When dancing with time, you shall always see you have danced beyond time. Remember yourself as you have always been. Much blessings and namaste.